Hi, I'm Tom Bach with the Fulton Park Civic Association. I'm joined by several neighbors from other civic associations because we're extremely concerned with the Greenburgh Central School District's proposed $114.6 million bond referendum. We've attended several informational sessions held by the school board, and yet, even after asking questions, we left without the information we felt was important to make an informed decision. After doing a lot of research and digging, we're able to present some of that information to the taxpayers, but these questions still need answers. Help us slow down the proposal that will have ramifications for our neighbors and our neighborhoods for years to come. I'm joined by three of my neighbors. Please introduce yourselves.
Well, I'm Dusan Dragic, and I live in Hartsdale, which is integrated into Central Greenburgh School District.
Okay.
Lance Petrus, I also live in Hartsdale, and I'm here as a concerned citizen.
My name is Carol Allen. I live in the Windsor Park area, and I've been a resident of Hartsdale for the past 25 years.
So let's get started with a few questions. Carol, you attended several of the informational sessions, as did all of us, that were held by the Board of Education. Can you tell me why you went to several of these meetings?
I went to several meetings because I needed to be convinced that spending this large amount of money would actually improve the academic achievement of the students in our district.
And were you convinced?
No, I was not convinced.
Can you elaborate a little bit? Tell us how so.
We already spend a significant amount of money on each student, somewhere between $35,000 and $38,000 per student.
Per student.
This bond, if it is passed, would increase that expenditure by about $3,000 per student. This would make us one of the highest spending school districts in Westchester.
And do other districts spend this amount of money, to your knowledge?
No, they do not spend anywhere near this.
Okay.
And many of them have significantly better academic achievement for their students.
Okay.
If we were to spend $3,000 per student on teachers or instructional activities, we might see a better outcome from our students. But I do not understand how spending $3,000 on a building and associated costs would actually improve the academic performance of our students.
So I know that when we went to the meetings, we were told that the students would learn better if they were in a new building as opposed to an old building. And, you know, my dad, my wife, my daughter-in-law are all educators. And they tell me that children learn when they're engaged, not by where they're sitting. So while having shiny new buildings would be nice, I don't know that it's really affordable. And I think that's the crux of kind of where we are with all of this. And what we're finding out more and more is as we dig and uncover more information, we're finding more and more numbers that are troubling. So Lance, let me switch to you. I know that you went to several of the meetings as well, and have stated numerous times that you have trust issues with the Board of Ed and the school administration. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit why.
I do have a big issue with the trust because the first time I found out about it was my wife told me when I got up in the morning, oh, by the way, you know, the school wants to pass $114 million. I think at that time it might have been a $200 million plus bond. I'm like, what? The only way she found out about it was an article in the Journal News. Now, a lot of people don't realize, but that vote was originally scheduled for December 2018.
Mm-hmm.
The only information you could find on it was in the school website. And the school's response, quite frankly, was like, it's your business to look at the school website, which I thought was very disingenuous, and obviously it was far from a public notice. So right there gives me a problem with their trust. And I can go on and elaborate more and more, but...
Do so.
All right. The other one, past history, which we're told to forget, is the landfill swap that the school administration and the Board of Ed contracted into. This was supposed to be a swap where contractors throughout the area would bring their landfill in for no charge by the school, and in return they would give us a football field. It didn't work out. The taxpayers were on the hook for $400,000 for the football field. Now their plan is also to take up that football field and build a new school. The other thing is, in regards to trust, they insisted at the last meeting I was at, it was $114 million. That included interest. That's a bold-faced lie. It's $114 million plus the interest, which comes to $195 million, which doesn't, by the way, include the $47 million that they need for the high school. So you're on the hook now for over $250 million.
So wait, you bring up an interesting point. So there's $114.6 million for the bond.
Correct.
There's how much for interest?
I think it's 80-something million.
84 million, correct?
Right.
So we've got $84 million, and that's without interest on that bond, or the...
No,
I'm sorry,
okay.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Right, okay.
There's another bond that's supposedly going to be proposed by the town to replace the police department and the courts over on 119. And that bond is going to be $49 million, and we don't know what the interest is for that. So I hesitate to say it, but I have a neighbor that's struggling to just maintain her house. She's retired. She's actually a widow now, and she told me, as sad as it is, she told me that I don't know how I'm going to afford this. I'm just scraping by as it is on my Social Security. And she said, probably the best thing that could happen for me is I die before this happens. And I said, oh my God, we can't let that happen. But maybe Dusan, from your perspective, I know you've gone to the bond meetings, and I know that as a senior, good-looking young senior, that you're concerned about this. The presentations all said $114.6 million, and that's what we were told. Is the fact that we're finding out now that there's $80+ million in interest?
Well, yes,
that
it's a
affect
big
you?
surprise to me, because from both their initial flyer, and in the meetings, they were all the time talking about 114 million.
Mm-hmm.
And only later on we realized that there is interest to
Sure.
it. And when you add interest, you still don't add the admin costs, bank costs, legal costs. So it's even more than 195 million. So I was really surprised and shocked, the difference between presentation and the actual costs of the bond.
Sure. So have you been able to go online or find out how much you're going to pay?
Well, yes, I did. I calculate. By the way, they presented a case of a 1 month tax increase. We don't pay by month, we pay by year.
Yeah.
So I calculated it and compared it to the assessment value of my house, and it comes out that I will pay $925 more in a school tax. And me and my wife, we live on pension, fixed income. So it's a big money. We already pay so much in taxes.
And that $925 is every year for the next 30 years.
Yes, they'll increase again in 10 years' time.
Well, and I guess one of the issues that I have with this also is that not only are we getting hit with the 114.6, the 84 in interest, and probably the 49 from the town, but there are other taxes that we pay in addition to this. So this is $114.6 million that's going to be in addition to what we already pay for school taxes. So, and the new budget is out for school taxes. I forget what the amount is. Maybe one of you know that. But
It's been stated $71 million.
$71 million
Which would be,
school
I
budget.
believe, a 4% increase over
So-
what we are paying now.
And, we've got the town increase, the school increase, there's a sewer tax increase, there's,
Salt.
well, those are components that add into it. But we've got other tax increases, and the county is
County.
increasing their taxes.
Sales taxes might also.
Sales taxes is, it's estimated that it's going to go up. And then the other problem we have is, as many in Greenburgh have already experienced and have been complaining about, with the federal government changing the taxes now, you can only deduct $10,000 in your property taxes. So this is creating a problem as well. But Carol, the other thing I wanted to ask you, because at one of the meetings you brought up the environment, and maybe you could touch on some of your concerns there.
Well, as an environmentalist, I'm very concerned about all the storms that we are now starting to have. Every time we have a significant storm now, we have trees that are falling down, knocking out power lines. There's lots of flooding. So if we were to take 23 acres of woodlands out of the Woodlands campus now, what effect is that going to have? Will it affect flooding? Will it affect the quality of the air? We don't have the answers to those questions.
Right.
There would also be more paving. There would be a 51% increase in the amount of impervious surface on that Wartburg campus. Will that contribute to greater flooding? Possibly so, but that doesn't seem to have been addressed in the environmental impact statement that was prepared and presented to us.
So one of the other things too that keeps coming up, and it's one of those nagging, will never go away questions, is increased traffic. And I've spoken to numerous residents that live on West Hartsdale Road, and they're already telling us now that they can't get out of their own driveways to be able to go to work or wherever they might want to be going. And that there's going to be an increase in traffic because of this. What's going to happen is, or what's proposed is that all the buses will be on the Woodlands or the Warburg campus, also where Woodlands High School is, for those that don't know. All the buses will be based there, and they will all be coming out of that area to go to different locations, different schools, different pickups. So we're going to have an increase in traffic. Ironically, there's been 2 traffic studies done, and one was done by the town, one was done by the school board. And not surprisingly, they differ in the information that they're presenting. And my concern is every traffic study that seems to get done always says there'll be a negligible amount of increase in traffic during these peak hours. And sadly, all they ever study is rush hour, whether it's in the beginning of the day or the end of the day. And I know in my neighborhood, we had the West Hab facility go up, and we told them that by doing this and having garbage pickup on the sidewalk side by the street, it's going to impact traffic. And the analogy was made of you throw a frog in boiling water, he jumps out and he lives, but if you put him in water and heat it up till it's boiling, he'll die. And that's kind of what we feel like is going on, is that we're all being smothered with additional traffic, but because some traffic study says, well, it's just going to be a little bit, or for only an hour or 2 hours, it's not that big a deal, but it is a big deal. And whether or not we have all the traffic going in and out of, from West Hartsdale into the campus, you've already got 2 other schools there. You have Maria Regina and Solomon Schechter. And as you look at the work session from the town this past week, there were a number of people that spoke from the Juniper Hill area. And Juniper Hill is also inundated with traffic. They claim that there are accidents. I'm not there, that there's blind spots. So there's a lot going on here, that impacts everything and everybody. So when the town tells us that they have a comprehensive plan, but it doesn't address traffic and it doesn't address schools, we've got to wonder how comprehensive is that comprehensive plan.
May I point out that the Juniper Hill Civic Association has come up with their own proposal about how to manage traffic, because they realize on their hill right now that it is not walkable. There would be increased walking by students who would lose their eligibility for bus transportation
Sure.
to the school. There are blind spots, there are corners that are difficult for the buses to navigate. There would be increased traffic on the hill from the teachers that are coming into the area, from the deliveries that are being made, from the support personnel that would have to come to the school. And they are actually proposing that many streets would need to be changed to one way in
Right,
order to
right.
accommodate the increased traffic. And this would be very inconvenient for many people who live on Juniper Hill,
Yeah.
because they would then no longer have direct access to their homes.
Right, right. And that seems to be what's going on everywhere, though. It's not just Juniper Hill. So, so do you think, based on all of this, do you think that we've gotten adequate and accurate information regarding the basis, for these new buildings?
I am convinced that we really don't have adequate information. The school board did not present to us the actual figures about costs per student. They talked about the current buildings do not meet the educational standards, yet when we asked them to tell us what those standards were, very little information was given. We had to ask repeatedly at several different meetings before we obtained any information at all.
Sure. And so, what do you think about the new buildings? And we're being told that new buildings will attract families and increase our home values.
When you go to purchase a new home, the first thing you look at is, can I afford it? That's a combination of the purchase price, mortgage payments, and your taxes that you will have to pay each year. If the taxes in our neighborhood become as high as those in surrounding communities, and those surrounding communities have better schools, it seems pretty obvious that the families might tend to go to those other neighborhoods instead of coming to ours,
Sure.
as we would hope would happen.
Sure. So, Lance, I know that.
I can just
Go ahead.
touch up on that with an example. Before the school revaluation, a house in Irvington sold for $800,000 was taxed at $10,000. A house in Hartsdale that sold for $600,000 was taxed at $16,000. So what I see happening with the school is that they're conflating school achievement with the actual physical building and it being new. And I don't think there's a true and legitimate correlation.
Makes sense.
And if I could touch on
Sure,
the
go ahead.
affordability issue too, which might actually be prescient, is just recently Hastings passed a bond for $18 million.
Right.
They have approximately 100 less students than we do in Greenburgh. It costs them $54 a year per $100,000 for 15 years. They're proposing our bond to be $168 per $100,000 of assessed value for 30 years. I just don't know why there seems to be such a disparity.
Well, and you bring up a good point, because one of the things that a lot of people have been saying, and you touched on this earlier, the average home, they keep saying that this is going to be X amount of dollars per 100,000. Well, there is no $100,000 home in Greenburgh, in any area in this part of the state. So what we're probably looking at is the real number for the average, say, $400,000 home is going to be somewhere in that, I believe the number was $862. So even if your home is worth a little bit less, say $300,000, it's probably, you're going to be seeing an increase of, say, $600 to $700. If you live in a condo or a co-op, they are charged a different rate for taxes than a single-family home is, and they pay about 60% of what a single-family homeowner pays. So a condo that's worth a couple of $100,000 might only be paying $200 or $300 for this increase, and they might think, hey, it's not that big a deal. But this impacts, as you mentioned yourself, this impacts a lot of people and whether or not they'll be able to stay in their home or stay in Greenburgh. And the example I used of the neighbor that I have, saying that, the best thing that could happen for her is she dies before goes through is absurd. So, we need to have a better proposal, a better solution, so that we don't lose our residents. We have to respect our seniors as well as look forward to the future, to the new families and the younger families.
If I may add to this,
Sure.
that we need better proposal. This proposal is full of incomplete information and disinformation. So I don't want to waste your time and go point by point.
Well, you could waste our time.
But as a citizen, as a member of this community, I will not vote yes or no based on incomplete or false information. I just reject it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that's kind of, a lot of people are concerned about the cost, and we were told that we could renovate or we could build new. But renovating isn't as good as having a new building. Then we were told, and one of the things that was also mentioned to us was if we build new, we don't have to worry about maintenance. And actually, I don't remember who it was that told me, but they looked at the budget and there is no provision for maintenance in the new buildings. Now, any building, I don't care how new or old it is going to require maintenance, and you can't avoid it. So it's a little disheartening that we've had, and I don't want to dwell on previous boards, but we had boards that made a decision that we would not maintain our buildings, and the excuse given was they didn't want to lay off teachers. I can appreciate that. However, if having a new classroom and a shiny classroom and new toys in the classroom, and I'm saying toys, I'm being facetious, but having new equipment and new programs and new components that you're going to use is important, then they should have been maintaining the classrooms they had, keeping them updated, and spending some money all along. And Lance, you touched on the Hastings bond.
Right.
That's, I don't know, was it voted through? Or?
It did pass,
It
yeah, it
passed.
did pass.
So Hastings has been maintaining their buildings all along. So for them, it hasn't been this big nut that had to get passed. Plus, they have more people that they can fan this out to for payment. So one of the things that people don't realize about the taxpayers in at least the Fairview district or Fairview area is the fire department, the fire district taxes are paid by half of the people there. So what happens is there are 48% of the Fairview Fire District properties are tax exempt. That means the rest of those people are paying double what they should. So this is also the same case in Hartsdale. So now we're looking at a school board that's going to impose even more on these families, and it gets more and more difficult to be able to handle. So with the information that we've just presented, we have a presentation that we're going to put on the end of this session, and you can watch it, and there are more numbers and more figures, but all the numbers that we've been discussing are factual. They've been acquired through official documentation, public records, and much of the information that was missing in the school presentation is some of what we're doing now. We believe that the proposal was rushed, was not properly vetted, and in its current form, a mistake that shouldn't move forward. We ask you to study what we've presented and try to make an informed decision, and not an emotional one, when voting on March 19th, whether you vote for or against the proposal. We've been told many, many times that we have to do it for the children. Well, yes, we have to do it for the children, but we also have to do it for the residents and the taxpayers so that they can afford to continue to live in Greenburgh. I want to thank everybody for participating, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hugh McCauley. I'm a resident of Hartsdale. I serve on a couple of committees within the town. And I just want to talk a little bit this morning, and then I want to back directly into the traffic issues. I live up on, I don't want to call it Poets Corner, but I live off of Secor Road and Hartsdale Avenue. So I have a PowerPoint, 4 slides, they're short, and this is a slide that I've seen numerous times in numerous presentations by the school district. And it shows the investments on capital budgets by other towns. And looking at this, it was a comparison made numerous times, analogies about bond issues equating to the community's commitment to our youth. And looking at this chart, it's pretty bad. I mean, you know, it makes Greenburgh look like we don't care about our children at all. And so, again, the source for this was the Greenburgh School District. I'd like to show you the next chart. This is the current spending per student of the same school districts that were listed on the first slide. And when you look at the Greenburgh, now we're at the top of the chart. We are significantly higher than White Plains, Mount Vernon, Blindbrook, Valhalla, and Scarsdale. So when you look at this chart, it kind of demonstrates our commitment to our youth, to our children. The taxpayers are committed. When somebody shows me this and they say, wow, you know, there's a lot of, a lot of comparison. The other thing that's not shown in this chart is the number of students that are involved. When you look at school districts that have 10, 12, 18,000 students and compare them to Greenburgh, this number's for about 2,000 children, and we're proud of that, and we continue to be proud of that. In addition to school district funding, our police department gets good funding to educate and protect our children, the fire department to educate and protect, the library is state-of-the-art, second to none, and our parks and recreation is probably the greatest program in Westchester County. Millions of dollars going in. Again, all from the same people that have to fund school district budgets. This morning there was a lot of talk, and I'll go directly into traffic in a moment. The school bond issue right now is a principal of about $115 million, and the interest is floating around $80 million. For $195 million, there is absolutely no guarantee of future bonds.
Can't talk that close to the microphone.
The second thing is, and I'll go deep into this, there is no money in the annual budgets for maintenance of these new buildings. The engineers and the architects are saying, you know, they're brand new, they should last 30 years without any significant cost. And, you know, building buildings for the Postal Service and maintaining, at one point I had 450 post offices to maintain. It didn't matter how old they were. If you buy a new house, you're going to have to put some money in to paint it and keep it going, or else in 30 years we'll have buildings that are in disrepair. There was selected community input during the design phase. That included this traffic study. The community, my community, had no idea that this was going on. Yeah, there was certain civic association leadership involved, and there was some input by community members, but again, there was no postcard, not even a postcard to say, hey, come out and tell us what you think. Tell us about the intersection of Secor and Hartsdale, where we have had fatalities after fatalities. Within the last year, I think it was 18 months, 2 people were killed at that same intersection. When you look at the number of students back in that first slide compared to the bond, the average bond per student cost is between $9,000 and $13,000. This bond is $92,000 per student. And then you have to ask yourself, and I'll go into more detail, do we have the confidence in the same board and administration that didn't want to tell us about the plan in the first place to manage a $250 million investment? Because that's what this comes down to. We're giving you $250 million, give or take. These are the impacts that our Veterans Committee has looked at. There is a discrepancy in the town, depending where you live, whether or not you get certain veterans benefits. The Veterans Advisory Committee decided not to ask the Greenburgh Central 7 Board for their tax break. And the reason for that was we felt that the taxpayers of Greenburgh were already struggling, and to ask them to give up more taxes at this time with these issues. Taxes in Greenburgh, the town, are going to go up. The county taxes are going to go up because the county sold off just about everything they can. School taxes are going to continue to rise with or without the bond. The Edgemont Incorporation has not been resolved. And the loss of the federal discount or deduction on your taxes. So these are real decisions by real people. We talked about future traffic studies. Mr. Garofalo, Mr. Warner, the school board. But even if the studies cost $30,000, and again, during this discussion this morning, the solutions cost money. It doesn't matter whether the town is burdening the cost. It doesn't matter whether the school district is burdening the cost,
Bearing the cost.
bearing the cost. It is the taxpayers that have to bear the costs. And so when you get to a point where the state, we talk about the state, there was an email this morning or last night that said, if you have a pothole, don't file a claim with the state because they have no money, they're not going to pay you. Coming across here this morning on Dobbs Ferry Road, the roads are atrocious. So they expect that we're going to get a large influx of cash from the state is unrealistic. So my thing is this. When we start talking about people and bearing tax rates, right? If we're going to vote on a project, tell us what the costs are. What are the street costs going to be by the town to fully resolve the issues, to protect the children, to protect the pedestrians? What is the final solution for Secor and Hartsdale Avenue? If the cost is to put a police officer out there during this time, how much is that going to cost, and is that going to fall within the 2% cap? So we're being now asked to vote for this. We'll look at all this stuff afterwards. We'll give you another bill afterwards, but it's too late. So what we need, and I just sat here for an hour listening to two great traffic studies, and they don't agree. We want, or the taxpayers are entitled to, a comprehensive plan and a comprehensive cost. Not piecemeal, not we need $200 million or $240 million today. We need another bond in 5 years and another bond in another 5 years. What is the comprehensive plan going to look like? And what is the comprehensive bill going to look like? That's it.
Very good.